You have just ceded there is no way anybody with an operable brain would look at our platform and say, yeah, that's the way I want to go, so I'm just going to make sure that they can't vote. Hi, my name is Reese Waters and I'm troubled. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the page. Now, remember when I showed you that clip detailing how Trump uses his goons to intimidate and threaten anyone who might stand in his way?
Now, Trump lied in an attempt to score some crude campaign points in a context that ought to be completely beyond crude politics. His partisans got rough with a civil servant who got in their way, and that civil servant ultimately dropped her complaint for fears of retribution. Does that sound familiar? Does it sound a little like the story of Alexander Vindman, the soldier and National Security Council staffer who blew the whistle on Trump's attempts to extort Ukraine for dirt on Joe Biden? Or maybe it reminds you of Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, the Georgia election officials whose lives were threatened after Trump falsely accused them of rigging votes. Or maybe it reminds you of the threats against the women who have accused Trump of sexual assault, and all the public officials who have prosecuted or sued him, and all the judges who have ruled against him, and all the elections officials who refused to break the rules or falsify votes for him, and all the Republicans who voted to impeach him. In each of those cases, Trump has gotten away with intimidation, mafia-style gangster threats because rank-and-file Republicans let him, or in many cases, just straight up help him. Using government power to make their partisan politics a sort of official state religion, and bullying anyone who gets in their way.
I mean, what happened to the party of law and order? The GOP has abandoned law and order longer than NBC has abandoned law and order. Are they ever coming back? Well, here comes Texas.
Like, for instance, the Volunteers for LULAC, that's the League of United Latin American Citizens, who are currently being targeted by the pro-Trump far-right Texas Attorney General.
Hearing from a LULAC member whose home was raided during a search authorized by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Now, the AG's office says it's investigating alleged election fraud and efforts to register non-citizens to vote.
They scared the hell out of me.
87-year-old Lydia Martinez says she was among those targeted by the search warrants. The longtime LULAC member helped senior citizens register to vote.
I feel that they're going to stop a lot of us from going out and doing our work. And that's what they want.
She said officers questioned her for hours, confiscated her phone and computer, and made her wait outside as they searched her home.
I said, let me get dressed. And she said, oh, go outside.
What were you wearing?
My nightgown. And I had all these policemen around me. It was embarrassing, humiliating. I was so angry. It was horrible.
I mean, the quintessential authoritarian nightmare, right? The knock at the door for protected political activity, for registering people to vote. So far, Ken Paxton's office has brought no charges. Those Latino volunteers have written the Department of Justice saying their civil rights were violated.
Now, Texas has been challenging Florida for months for the title of the most deplorable. Well, our governor said slaves learned valuable skills and that anything closely resembling the truth of U.S. history shall be deemed CRT. We literally still employ Ted Cruz. Where the chairman of our Republican Party and his activist wife, who's a co-founder of Moms for Liberty, got embroiled in a three-way scandal. Our governor praised the courage of the officers in Uvalde. Our governor has lifts in his shoes. We sent migrants in a bus up to New York City. We also sent migrants in a bus up to New York City. Well, our National Guard and state troopers actually blocked U.S. Border Patrol from access to the border. We have fully criminalized DEI as well as anything remotely close to efforts to uplift black people or any other disenfranchised community. 2 words: Dallas Cowboys. Now here comes Texas, as if the state's shameless pandering for Trump wasn't bad enough when it came to abortion.
An update to a story we brought to you on Friday. The Texas Supreme Court is blocking an abortion for a woman whose fetus has a fatal diagnosis. Kate Cox, who is 20 weeks pregnant, was warned by her doctor and multiple doctors that if she carries this pregnancy to term, it will likely jeopardize her health and future fertility. Despite this, the Texas Attorney General asked the state Supreme Court to step in, arguing Cox does not meet the criteria for a medical exception. Today is Monday, December 11th, and believe it or not, it is 2023, not 1923. And that's where we're going to begin this morning. This is an unsettling and all too common story. Once again, an aging white man faces indictments, is accused of covering up an affair, faced impeachment, and still his wrecking ball use of political power continues with brutal consequences on the lives of women. It sounds familiar. I'm actually not talking about Donald Trump. This time, it's another far-right Republican who considers it a compliment to be called Trumpy. After all, this man, according to Reuters, tried to sue Joe Biden over 50 times on issues including immigration and gun rights and a ton of other garbage. I'm talking, of course, about Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Paxton is so desperate to mimic Trump, so desperate for Trump's support that he led a lawsuit in 2020 to challenge the results of that year's election in Trump's favor. The Supreme Court, of course, quickly threw that out. But that's how desperate he is. The man is so desperate to mimic Trump that he behaves in a cruel, brutal fashion and won't back down until a ill woman is physically and emotionally destroyed.
Which actually backfired, by the way. They went a little bit too hard in the paint on that one. They went a little bit too far. Listen to what Trump is saying now.
You overturn,
everyone does.
I
think
overturn Roe,
does, yeah.
And you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
As if the state's shameless pandering for Trump wasn't bad enough on abortion, now
Early morning raids and utter confusion left even abuelitas standing on the sidewalks in their pajamas. So now a prominent Latino advocacy group is accusing the Texas Attorney General of voter intimidation and calling on the DOJ to do something about it. AG Ken Paxton's office executed a series of raids on the homes of Democratic leaders and activists, most of them Latino, in what he describes an ongoing probe into voter fraud. But here's the backstory in case you're not very familiar with Paxton. He's been an outspoken election denier and has also been accused of a wide range of misconduct, narrowly dodging an impeachment and even a criminal trial. He denies all of the allegations. ABC News has reached out to Paxton for comment on the raids. We have not heard back, and so far no charges have been filed against those whose homes were raided. Juan Proaño is the CEO of the League of United Latin American Citizens. They are demanding accountability here. Juan, great to see you. What was your reaction when you first started getting those calls from your members telling you what happened?
We were, utter shock, to be very candid with you. We knew that, Paxton was going after nonprofit organizations. He had gone after the Archdiocese of Rio Grande Valley, for example, the Annunciation House. Our expectation was that he was going to go after LULAC as well. So we were very surprised when he started to go after Latino community leaders and even individual LULAC members.
So what do you say to AG Paxton's description of these raids as part of a voter fraud probe?
There's no merit to it at all. There's no evidence that was actually provided, even to the judge when they received these warrants. They're baseless. And we know for a fact, certainly as it relates to our members, that there is nothing at all to substantiate any voter harvesting, any voter fraud at all. To our knowledge, to the work that we do in the state.
Well, Why do you think these specific people were targeted? I mean, clearly what stood out to us was seeing all the, the abuelitas there in their pajamas, standing on the sidewalks. I mean, it was a little crazy.
Lydia Martinez is salt of the earth. I mean, she has been a LULAC member for over 35 years. She's a member of the AI Forum. She has 5 brothers who served in the military. One of her brothers actually died in the Vietnam War and received the Silver Star for his service. These are Latino U.S. citizens that are committed to their rights, to civil rights, and all they're doing is going out there and helping other Latinos register to vote. Lydia, in the specific case, is certified by the state to actually vote. And they went in and they seized her phone, they seized her computer, they seized her calendar book with all of her contacts, doctor's appointments, prescription medicines, and they interrogated her for over 3 hours, in addition to leaving her outside in full view of her neighbors. And it is absolutely disgusting the way that they've handled these raids and these warrant seizures.
The Texas Senate Democratic Caucus has formally asked the federal government to investigate possible violations of Texans' voting rights. In a letter sent to the U.S. Justice Department on Friday and announced by Democratic Caucus Chair Senator Carol Alvarado of Houston, the upper chamber's Democratic lawmakers wrote that recent efforts by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and other state leaders have a disproportionate impact on Latinos and other communities of color, which is sowing fear and will suppress voting. Quote, based on media reports and complaints by fellow Texans, we have serious concerns that some recent actions taken by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and other state leaders may violate federal civil rights and voting laws. That's how the letter reads, and it's been signed by all 12 Democrats in the state Senate. And you might be watching and wondering, the Attorney General, the top cop violating civil rights and voting laws. Well, you probably live in a state where your AG's Wikipedia page doesn't read like this. Paxton was indicted in 2015 on state securities fraud charges relating to activities prior to taking office. He's pleaded not guilty. The case was delayed over various procedural issues, but in October of 23, his trial was scheduled for April of 24. In October of 2020, several high-level assistants in Paxton's office accused him of bribery, abuse of office, and other crimes. Paxton was impeached with bipartisan approval in May of 23 by the Republican-controlled Texas House of Representatives by a vote of 121 to 23, leading to his suspension. The articles of impeachment included allegations that Paxton gave preferential treatment to a political donor who bribed him, misapplied public resources, and made false statements against whistleblowers, obstructed justice in the securities fraud trial against him, and made false statements regarding his financial interests. In September of 23, the Texas Senate voted to acquit Paxton of all articles of impeachment, ending his suspension from office. Paxton is separately being investigated by federal prosecutors for these same legal issues on coinciding federal statutes. By the way, that's up at the top of his Wikipedia page before you get to the section breakdown. And Wikipedia is wildly conservative in what they allow to stay up there. Those are just the basic facts. So this is the guy that I'm supposed to believe has so much legitimate interest in voter integrity. I'll tell you what the real problem in Texas is. It's candidate integrity. I mean, that's so much smoke. You ain't got nobody else for Attorney General with just like a tiny fire? Just like maybe like a house fire around him. That's a 4-alarm apartment joint.
Ken Paxton, a corrupt politician whose alleged crimes include fraud, theft, bribery, and possible treason. He is now a fugitive on the run. Let's take a look. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton was at his home near Dallas when authorities showed up to issue him a federal subpoena. Paxton then immediately tried to escape. He snuck out his back door while his wife prepared a getaway truck. Paxton hopped in and the two sped off, evading the subpoena. This isn't Paxton's first attempt to evade the law. His story begins as a common thief. In this shocking video footage from 2013, you can see Paxton enter the courtroom and steal a $1,000 pen. In 2015, Paxton was indicted for felony securities fraud for ripping off his own clients. He has spent 7 years dodging his day in court. As Attorney General, Paxton has come under FBI investigation for abusing his office. His own employees have blown the whistle on him for taking bribes. Ken Paxton, on the run since 2015. He just might be the most corrupt politician in America.
Which leads us to Paxton's motivations. Now, LULAC had never formally backed a political candidate in its 95-year history until this month when it endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris. Bro, how sloppy is that? How sloppy are you gonna be? That's like breaking up with your girlfriend on February 13th or December 24th. You might want to give yourself a little leeway to make it a little less obvious you got laid off and you got no money for gifts. Come on! Trump has instructed the Republican National Committee to devote more resources to election integrity than traditional field work ahead of this election. We'll come back to that. Just last week, he insisted at a rally in North Carolina that the GOP's primary focus is not to get out the vote, it's to make sure that they don't cheat. You know, we've seen the leaks from Roger Stone.
We're working on it. Lawyers, judges, technology.
Governors?
Some, but there aren't many letting go.
We got to use every lever we can.
We are doing that.
And the intentional placement and empowerment of election deniers in key positions in swing states.
And that brings us to the biggest threat, which is that many of these MAGA cult members have been able to obtain roles as county election officials who will have a role in certifying state election results. In a new report from the watchdog group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, titled Election Certification Under Threat, they point out that since 2020, more than 30 county officials across the country have voted to deny or delay certifying election results in violation of law, often citing false claims of voter fraud or irregularities. Among those, officials are avowed 2020 election deniers, individuals who acted as fake presidential electors for Donald Trump, and a criminally convicted participant in the January 6th insurrection who was later removed from office.
But for the Republican plans to challenge election results in court to succeed, there needs to be a convincing case. There's more than partisan politics at work. And you know, it's hard to make that case when all of a sudden you're raiding the offices of the group that just endorsed Kamala Harris the first time in 95 years. In targeting such a specific group in such a sloppy and shameless fashion, Paxton may have just undermined all of those efforts.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Now here is my big problem with all of this. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of people exercising their rights, people's ability to vote, the Voting Rights Act, and voter intimidation is not something that I take lying down. But let's just imagine you and I both own a burger joint right across the street from one another, okay? You spend all of your time and energy and effort trying to make sure that the people who come into the community know that your burger joint is there. In fact, you reach out to people outside of your community in case they might want to come in and enjoy your burger joint. You take suggestions on the kind of burgers they might like and use those suggestions in compiling your menu. Me, on the other hand, I spend all the time that you spend reaching out to people and taking suggestions, trying to slow down your ability to connect to those people and trying to make sure that those people have a harder time coming in and enjoying your burger joint. I spend all of my time trying to create construction projects and traffic jams to make people angry as they come in to enjoy your burger joint. At no point am I spending any of that time, I don't know, trying to make my burger joint decent, as opposed to honestly trying to attract voters. You engage in voter intimidation and voter suppression. Is there a bigger red flag to your platform than that? You have just ceded there is no way anybody with an operable brain would look at our platform and say, yeah, that's the way I want to go, so I'm just going to make sure that they can't vote. It really kind of reminds me of that case in Alabama. You remember where I actually did a whole Races of the Week on it, where there was like a cabal of folks that just prevented everybody from voting, and they just nominated themselves, the mayor and the council, because they knew if there was any way that people would actually vote, that 80% black town would have booted them out in no time. There really should be a whole lot more to answer for when it comes to these kind of efforts on behalf of the GOP. The principle among them: why is your self-esteem so low that you don't trust people to be able to choose the better of the two platforms? Sincere thanks to everybody who's reached out to me and submitted suggestions for videos. Keep them coming. I take submissions for ideas for a video, suggestions for Races of the Week. If you have something that just troubles you, or you just want to send me a note, because I love getting those notes, go ahead and shoot me an email at reese@reesewaters.com. I also have a newsletter that I send out periodically, so you'll be receiving that as well. You can also sign up on my website, reesewaters.com.